Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Griffin. I'm a 2010 alumnus, former football player, and the inaugural director of the Black and Gold Club. For those unfamiliar, the Black and Gold Club is Vanderbilt's recently established athletics alumni network, honoring all former Vanderbilt student athletes, spirit, student managers, and student training staff. We provide unique and exclusive ways to build social and professional connections among current and former student athletes, the Vanderbilt Athletics Department, faculty, and the broader Vanderbilt community. For any athletics alumni who may not be receiving our communications, I encourage you to contact me directly so we can ensure you are informed of any upcoming initiatives. And if you are on social media, please connect with us at Vandy BG Club. That's Vandy, V-A-N-D-Y, BG Club. I'm proud to announce that we have launched a series of virtual discussions titled Conversation with Pioneers. This conversation series will serve as an avenue for sharing the stories and history of all Black student athletes on Vanderbilt's campus. Joining me today are two Vanderbilt Athletics pioneers. Teresa Phillips is the recently retired athletic director at Tennessee State University, a post she has held from 2001 to 2020. She was also the head women's basketball coach at Tennessee State and Fisk Universities, and led the Tigers men's team for one game in 2003. Becoming the first woman to coach a D1 men's basketball team. Teresa attended Vanderbilt on an academic scholarship, first playing center on the women's club basketball team. In her sophomore year, 1977 through 78, Vanderbilt upgraded women's basketball to varsity, with Teresa becoming Vanderbilt's first Black female student athlete. She was named Vanderbilt's Female Athlete of the Year in 1980. Welcome, Teresa, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
Gurley is a retired administrator, a counselor, and teacher for the state of Tennessee, Metro Nashville Public Schools, and private facilities. He specialized in psychiatric childcare and the inclusion of students with disabilities in the general education classroom. Rod was a 6'4", 240-pound defensive tackle at Vanderbilt, arriving in Nashville from Chicago's Hyde Park High School. Rod became a starting defensive end as a redshirt freshman in 1978, but suffered through 2 sprained ankles in his first collegiate game. After regaining the starting position as a freshman, Rod played through a knee injury and a broken wrist as a sophomore. Rod continued to be a defensive standout and an important team leader as a junior and senior, serving as team captain in both 1980 and 1981. Rod Gurley led the Vanderbilt Commodores to victory in 1981 in the 1981 inaugural game of the newly renovated stadium. Welcome, Rod, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. We want to make sure all the records are very accurate, so I'm sure I can play defensive end because can do that. But I love playing defensive tackle, and that's what I played at Vanderbilt.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. All right, we're gonna have a few questions here. Just wanted to share for you all to share your history and your story of what's going on and what you've experienced as student athletes. So thinking back to your senior year in high school, what was it that led you to attend Vanderbilt, and did you have any concerns at the time when making that decision? And we'll start with you, Teresa.
Yeah, hey, believe it or not, I decided to come to Vanderbilt probably in the 8th grade. I'm from Tennessee, so I had a Latin teacher whose daughter was a student at Vanderbilt. And so, she just talked about her daughter on and off throughout that academic year. And I was foolish enough to decide then that I was going to come to Vanderbilt. So it's kind of a weird type situation with me. Obviously, I wasn't recruited as a student athlete. And so, hey, it was either go to UT and wear all that ugly orange like my son did, or go on and follow up and follow my Latin teacher's daughter and come to Vanderbilt. So I didn't have any concerns. I'm a first generation, my siblings and I are first generation college attendees. Neither one of our parents went to college. So if you really kind of think about before the world of the internet and all that kind of stuff, you didn't really have a whole lot of experiences about colleges and what college was like and about and prep for going to college. So you really went probably with a blind eye somewhat and just got there, and then you just had to kind of figure it out when you got there. And that was kind of the case with me.
Now, Rod, you came to Nashville from Illinois. what were the first things you noticed about how things were different down here, and how did that influence your decisions?
I had no concept of Vanderbilt before my senior year of high school, even though my mother's parents and both my name and everything is from Tennessee and northern Alabama. And I had came to Tennessee all my life, and more of a West Tennessee, as opposed to coming to Nashville. We just would pass through to go to Gurley, Alabama, go to Huntsville. So I had deep roots in Tennessee, as I still do, but I did not have any concept of a school called Vanderbilt or what it represented or in any way that it had a football team. I was playing football, and my high school coach was one of the best friends of Hubbard Alexander, who was the coach, black man who played at Tennessee State along with my high school coach. And he was coaching on Vanderbilt's team and was responsible for recruiting a lot of great athletes to Vanderbilt, as well as going on to recruit a lot to Miami and Dallas Cowboys. That's the direct beeline that I had to Vanderbilt, not knowing anything about it. I had a tough high school coach that delighted in whooping my butt, and I was pretty much told what I was going to do, and that's what got done. I just simply like to look at my mother's face, who was very much aware of Vanderbilt, when somebody came knocking at the door with that title and moniker saying that they would give her son a scholarship. I knew that was the right thing to do because I was very much about education.
Awesome. So when you think about it, relative to today's population, there were very few Black students, let alone Black student athletes, during your time on campus. Can you describe the social scene and the community you felt with your fellow Black students on and off campus?
Wow, I guess we'll let ladies go first the whole time. Wow, probably my second day at Vanderbilt, first full day after your parents left you, and we gathered at what we call the Afro House. And I remember it was like middle of the day, and probably every Black student who was in school was there. I don't know how we found our way to get there, but we were there. And my first experience, period, socially, was the Q stepping, the Omega Sci-Fi. So I almost had to run back home to Chattanooga. I was scared of all this stuff. I hadn't been exposed to that. I went to all white girls' school, almost. But my eyes were bucked, and I was ready then. So there were very few of us. I would say, well, obviously, since I was the first Black female athlete, none of the Black female students were athletes. At that time, they were just all students. And I don't know, Rod and Thrill may know the percentage of the Black male students, how many of them were athletes and how many of them were not. But I mean, it was somewhat, and I wasn't used to this, to be honest. Even back in 1976, it was a segregated society when I first came to Vanderbilt. I mean, we had actually a table in Rand Hall cafeteria that was reserved for the Black students. And it wasn't officially reserved. It just obviously had been reserved prior to me getting there. And you learned maybe your first day eating, this is where we all sat, and nobody else sat there. And maybe a poor little freshman, their first day of eating, didn't know that they weren't supposed to sit there. I'm talking about a white kid, but then they'd sit there and they very quickly realized that they were like surrounded by all the Black students. I mean, we didn't do any harm to them, but it was a little bit of a segregated circumstance, I think, outside of athletics. Obviously, athletics is never segregated. You're on the team and you just deal with each other and you love each other, you play together. In class, you're just competing against each other, you're studying and that kind of thing. But the rest of campus life was very segregated in 76 to 80 when I was at Vanderbilt. That was my experience.
Thank you for sharing. How about you, Rod? Same question.
Well, if you're talking about my personal experiences versus the experience of the collective of the Black students, especially those who were coming in as athletes, at that time there were the greater numbers at one time coming in, that, you know, as football players would be, you know, athletes coming in at one time. Then there were some other students who did get, Black students who got recruited into maybe the engineering school and there. However, because of football, you are separated for a while before you really can see what's happening on campus, who's there and what's going on once you start hitting those classrooms. But my background, I was prepared for whatever was going to come my way, but I did not understand all the dynamics of Nashville, Vanderbilt, and the South, and how that was going to affect what was going on with Black student athletes on the courts and the football field. So I did have to learn that, yeah, there's racism on the court, on the field, there's in the classroom, and then it's, you know, kind of systematic. However, it's up to that individual to know who they are when they come to Vanderbilt and know what Vanderbilt is when they get there. And that's part of what I feel that Vanderbilt was not doing. They weren't clear about what hills and mountains that we might have to cross, and they didn't know how to provide us with the proper support once we got there. So lack of understanding can lead you to think that there was open racism when there could have been some times where they just didn't have a clue. And that, you know, I didn't have a problem saying things, but sometimes I didn't know what to say.
Yeah. All right. Now, when you think about, I mean, if there's apparent racism, of course, during that time, can you share some examples of some things that you encountered, whether it be from coaches, administrators, teammates, fellow students on campus? And then, you know, being in the SEC and traveling to other states and different schools, what about the fans that you encountered?
I'll tell you what, T, I'll take that first. You know, take
Yeah,
that press off.
you probably got more of them than I do. I have two good ones though.
Well, you know, I can say that when you're walking around on campus and 3 or 4, you know, athletes, Black guys are walking, you know, on one side of the street, and these 2 or 3 little white girls quickly run their tails across on the other side to make sure that they're not going to have to cross your path. It can be funny and humorous at the same time. It can, you know, if you let that set into you or what just happened, you know, it can kind of hurt you a little bit also. We all know about walking across campus and seeing Confederate flags and all of that kind of thing, but mostly subtle looks and things that would occur in classrooms if you open your mouth, or being the only Black in a classroom, or certain things that you might want to bring up in classes that, you know, in the day's world would be very open and common, but back then people were not ready to, you know, be that diverse in, you know, their views in the classroom, sociology, psychologies, and that kind of thing. So you did see a lot of those types of looks. I was followed off campus a couple of times, walking across campus, come back on campus with my pizza in hand to get confronted by campus police. I'm a suspicious character. Guy doesn't even know that I'm starting defensive tackle of the football team. He calling over to ask the one Black who was on the police squad at that time. You fast forward that to 2, 3 years ago, I come to campus for homecoming. Same thing happened. Gray hair, everything else. They come up on me. I'm a suspicious character because I'm a Black man walking across campus, and wasn't no other reason. So it's there then, it was there now. I know a lot of students were worried about their grades. I was happy if they gave me a passing grade, because I knew if they didn't like me, hey, y'all dealing with me. But I know it was a lot of people that came there, put their hearts in it, got a C or a B when they know they deserved an A. And I felt their pain just because I knew what that meant to them. You know, as especially folks who weren't necessarily athletes. They came there specifically for those degrees in specific areas, and they felt it deep. And to this day, when they know that they were slighted because of the color of their face. On the field, yes. To this day, there are football players and basketball players that hurt because of what was denied to them on the court and on the field, and whether or not they got to play it or why they were denied to play. Sometimes it came all the way down to there couldn't have been any other reason but the color of their skin. And those stories need to be heard and told by each individual as they get able to come back to Vanderbilt and tell their story in a safe environment.
Wow. Are you
I'm through.
okay? Wow. I mean, you know, again, being in the early days of women's basketball and women's sports at Vanderbilt, I wasn't as challenged as I think my fellow male student athletes were. I think the women of color who were on campus, we were very aware of what some of our fellow students were going through as male student athletes, just the inequities that they probably faced, even within their team. I couldn't, Rod, of course, could tell a little bit more about traveling in the SEC and just how they were accepted on the field when they're, you know, because fans can be very ugly. And I even experienced at Mississippi State walking off of their court, going through the tunnel and being spat at, literally. And this was women's basketball. And, you know, you all wouldn't probably have ever met me if that piece of spit had hit me. It didn't, but I actually got spat at. And Kathy Bender is on, I think she may have been with us on a trip in which we were not served down in Mississippi. We all sat at a table, you know, the team comes in, everybody scatters, probably about 3 or 4 African-American girls, and maybe a white girl on the team sat with us. She didn't get to eat either because she was sitting with us. And we were talking and enjoying ourselves and everything. You know, we weren't paying attention that we, you know, hadn't given our order yet. But at some point, we kind of looked around and we saw other people on the team eating, the coaches and stuff. We're like, you know, why are we not, you know, haven't even been, you know, taking an order. And then we found out that they weren't going to take our order. None of the waitresses would take our order. And so the manager, a white male, said, but I'll take your order. Well, you know, we weren't going to eat then. We were just going to like, no. And this really happened in Mississippi in the late 70s. I think Kathy is shaking her head, so she remembers that account. So we some of that was still going on. And, you know, let's be honest, we found out from what is happening in our country now through this summer that those of us who almost forgot that these kind of things go on, we are now remembering they are still going on in all sorts of different ways. So there's still some of those same challenges. I didn't experience that much discriminatory attitudes in the classroom. I know they did exist though. And unfortunately for us, many of us were raised, you know, you got to do twice as much and be twice as good and work twice as hard and not, you know, and that's fine, you know, free civil rights or something like that. But I don't want my children and grandchildren to have to continue to be faced with, they always have to do double and be twice as. That shouldn't be. And hopefully this next generation of maybe do a little bit better job than our generation did, putting their foot down and showing we're not going to accept we're not going to take this, whether it's on Vanderbilt's campus, in the city of Nashville, you know, in this country. And I really pray, Chris, that your generation does continue to fight that fight and be a little bit more aggressive in fighting it. And I'm telling you, I did not feel that way as much until this last year, in which I really had to reassess being a person of color and being a woman of color in this country.
Thank you all for sharing those experiences. I can only imagine what it was like for you all experiencing all of that. And so just wanted to ask, how did you cope with those encounters? Like, did you have any allies or supporters that were helpful, and what did they do to be supportive for you?
Well, the great thing about it is this: as many people, whoever they were and why, they might not have liked me or a person of color on the campus or whatever, there had to be 5 or 6 more who was just cool with it and ready to help. So I can't say that I, didn't have friends of all, creeds and color, and all of that. I had professors that were able to confess to me that initially they thought, oh, I was just going to come in the classroom and be some typical jock acting up or something. And now, oh, they're surprised that I was actually paying attention. I'd be a little upset, but at least the 1 or 2 that admitted that to me, I was glad that they did, because I knew that there were several who didn't do it, and I might not have gotten I could have gotten maybe a better grade, but just the fact that when you walk in that room, you don't know what you are confronted with. But there are people there who are ready to help you combat it. Everybody is not there with that same frame of mind. So you got to find them and hold on to it. I know that a lot of folks did have family support and that kind of thing, and others who came, I saw that was probably an issue, that we had many people who were not able to survive the 4-year challenge or get to the degree aspect of the reality of coming to school. They left and they didn't have the proper support, and many did not know what it was going to take. So I feel for them very much, and I feel that that's the biggest area where Vanderbilt could have done us more of a great service to retain many more that had left.
And how about
Me being in intercollegiate athletics, I'm aware of what such a vast change of what is offered to student athletes now. Is it enough? It probably isn't. Is it so much more than we were able to have? Yes. Being a lower middle income student on Vanderbilt's campus, whether you're an athlete or whether you're just a student, is challenging. And so having things like cost of attendance, having other outlets to support who you are and allowing you to be who you are, it would be very helpful. I'm not sure how much Vanderbilt has advanced in that way. I saw our athletics director on here earlier, and so I have a lot of confidence in Candice and her leadership and the leadership that she's bringing in and surrounding herself with. But it is an everyday, all day long job to try to really give support outside of on the playing field of student athletes. And when you're a student athlete of color, especially on a PWI campus, that has to be addressed. And I think what Rod is saying, it just simply wasn't really addressed when we were there. And a lot of what we did, we depended on each other. We supported each other. We pulled each other along. I mean, all the way through graduation type pulled each other along. We supported each other when some of our guys just weren't given the opportunity to play and start out on the football field. Football really probably had more of a problem with that than men's basketball, but it was evident, it was visual, we saw it. We used to sing the Vanderbilt rah-rah song. We put our own Black student words to it. I don't think I better share those words with you. Yeah, some of them are smiling. We had to sing our own song, and invent some words that soothe our little spirits with it. But again, like Rod said, there always are some people in every situation who have your back, who may not fully understand how it feels to be a minority in a situation or circumstance, but who really pull their arms out to us. We had June Williams on the women's side in athletics, who just was dedicated to just caring and loving on folks. And so that was very important. And most of us probably can name a professor or two that we know, despite them being probably a Southern elitist type academician, really respected once they saw, as Rod said, that we're here to get our education. We're here to learn. We're here to try to leave this place and go be successful. We're not just here to bounce a ball or kick a ball or whatever. And so sometimes, I've been at a HBCU for 31 years until I retired this summer. And you know, professors on our campus view our athletes often in the very same way. So that's not, you know, just a Vanderbilt issue or a black and white issue. You know, that's something that, you know, we in intercollegiate athletics got to kind of fight all the time.
Now, Teresa, for a little bit here, coming along during the very early stages of women's basketball, the other women's basketball program at Vanderbilt and women athletics in general at Vanderbilt, how were women's sports received back then? And what were some of the biggest differences you saw between how men and women's sports were treated?
We don't have enough time. So that's right. I mean, we were at the infancy of it. You know, we had one set of uniforms. The men were flying places. If it was far enough to fly, they would bus and luxury coaches, and we were taking 15-passenger vans. It was huge differential. But we were playing for the love of it. As you know, I played as a club player, like highfalutin intramurals that you just played other schools who didn't have an intercollegiate team yet. You just played because you love playing. And so it was kind of the purity of it at that point. But I stayed long enough because I came back and was a part-time assistant coach. I stayed long enough to really see Vanderbilt start pumping more money and getting coaches, professional coaches, and a staff and those kind of things. Kathy was at the very end of that. I think Kathy was on the team. I was back coaching, and Kathy was on the team that won the women's NIT. So in that short period of time, those about 5 years from when I started as a sophomore, and I was a young part-time assistant coach, a lot of changes started happening. I mean, we were dressing in the PE locker room. We didn't have a locker room. So it was a big differential, but it's fun to look back at that and then to see where our women's team is now, how they are treated, the equity, from the facilities, from the support of staffing and all those kind of things. It's just like night and day. And I'm glad I got to live to see it. But you know, I'm not mad that I had that one little sorry black uniform and no warm-ups, because, you know, it kind of made me who I am. It made me appreciate it. You know, I could tell my children, you know, I had to walk 10 miles in the snow to school kind of type story. So, you know, when they complain about, you know, the circumstances that they had when they were playing in high school, and then one of my kids in college. So it's, you know, we did experience that. I got to see the Title IX movement come to some level of, I would say, equity now.
Now, Rod, it has been very important to you that Vanderbilt's Black football players finally begin to receive the respect, support, and recognition that they have been, you know, due for quite a while, and that your stories are recorded for history. Why has this been such an important mission for you?
Well, it's been, you know, quite a few years now, going back 3, 4, 5 years. And my fight has been for the Black student athlete. And I've come back to Vanderbilt all the time as a alum to come to games. I've been back as a committee member and all the different clubs on campus, alumni clubs, to try to, you know, maintain interaction with Vanderbilt since leaving there. Thrill Kill, Wayman Buggs, John Pointer, Kathy Bender, as you know, the names go on of a lot of us who have kept going throughout the years ever since we actually graduated as a continuum. But we have fought to have Black alumni reunions. We've tried to have this. We've had to fight to where they didn't even want us to call ourselves Black. We had to be Mosaic for a while, and you know, then we had to decide whether or not the fight that we thought from the old was the fight that the student body now, you know, and where their leadership at, and still no one knew their history. Teresa's talking about how Kathy, and you know, we were there making Black history and didn't even know that 4 and 3 and 7 years ago that there was Black history that had been made before us. And then to come to find out 3 and 4 years after you leave, somebody black is coming along saying, "Who are you?" And you're going, "Oh, okay, you play ball and you don't know me," and they don't know their history. So even though we made history, it was kept from us. It wasn't told to us, and no one was understanding the important things that some of these black athletes were doing and what we were doing as a whole in those 70s. And as Teresa said, most of the time we just looked at it like we were, against everything. We were at a school that was against everything. They were smaller school. Everybody's wanting to beat us up. Hey, I'm ready for the fight. And then you say, well, now here we are, this small group of black athletes, and we're in a fight, even within our, what is supposed to be a protective environment, where we were down to ourselves. We started losing people, losing numbers, not 1 and 2, but numbers. And those things hurt to this day. So we have to correct it, all of us.
Absolutely. And that's certainly what we're trying to do here with the Black and Gold Club, and opportunities like this for you all to continue to share your stories and your history with everyone. And so as we look at, the status of the current student athlete, and you touched on this a little while ago, that, we're dealing with stuff within this past year, and social justice, utilizing your platform, your voices, in order to, push for a change that you want to see. What do you most want today's generation of Black student athletes to understand about your experience that will help them better serve the community and society as a whole?
Talk to Teresa first or Rod?
You go, Rod.
Okay. Well, whatever I want a student athlete to know right now is the same thing I wanted the one who was here 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 and so forth. We have to connect the history. It is Vanderbilt's African-American history. It is Vanderbilt's history. And it is Nashville's history. When we came, there was no pro football team. There was no pro anything. There was us, and us playing the biggest schools in the country and so forth. There was TSU, had a great, reputation. And that pretty much was it, other than the little small schools. And we represented and, did it well. And nobody understands what we were doing and what we were going through. Vanderbilt has never recognized what happened or shown the appreciation towards those student athletes that continue to represent Vanderbilt on the court, coaches, on the fields, and in business. These Black athletes do so many great things around the country that we don't know about, because we do hear a few things. And I want to make sure that, everybody is knowing what we are doing, and that they understand what was happening from the very first, all the way back to Perry Wallace, all the way back to Stokely, and just know your history so you can be proud of it. I don't like folks laughing at Vanderbilt in any way, but I definitely don't like anybody trying to criticize Vanderbilt that does not know the history of Vanderbilt and doesn't have respect for it. I think every coach that comes here, every athletic director that's hired here, if they don't have that kind of respect, I don't see how Vanderbilt can move forward.
I'm going to ditto what Rod has said. I think the word that really resonated with me, Rod, is history. And I'm just a big believer that you must know your history. You must understand that someone came before you to set some of the platform by which you are really have an opportunity with. And that, it just didn't start with you. And I think that's just called respect. I think you do that within your families. You do that within your community. We should be doing that as a people. And I think with our student athletes, they should have that understanding. They have a lot of opportunities at a Vanderbilt that we didn't have. And I dare say they have challenges that, you know, I'm not going to say we shouldered all the challenges, because there are continued challenges for each generation. But you must be cognizant, aware that there were people that came before you that made a lot of sacrifices and really took some of the hits so that you're not having to take these same hits. And so what I always want for young people to do is say, hey, can you lead a place a little bit better than what you found it. Speak your truth, be courageous. And I think those are the kind of things that will advance Vanderbilt Athletics, will advance our student athletes of color and our other student athletes. You know, I can then also speak a little bit from the standpoint of equity and our respect for women and our women athletes. We have a woman leader now in Candice that people need to treat as the professional and the leader and the person who is in charge of this department. So we as alumni want to do that, and we need to be supportive of her in that way. And we also need to challenge her just as much as we would challenge a male AD, that we have expectations and that we want to move Vanderbilt forward. And I love it, Rod, that, hey, you sound like you would get on the football field and fight again if somebody say something smart about them Commodores. So I like that, though. You know, we had left a little blood and tears over there on West End Avenue. So it does mean something to us.
On that, sorry, go ahead. On that note, I wanted to invite a special visitor here, our athletic director, Dr. Candice Lee. Just wanted to send a few words to you all for being here today with us.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to thank you all. Just a couple comments. So I really appreciate the candor, and I appreciate the feedback that I've heard from this group so far. I welcome it. Like, I invite that dialogue, and I think what Teresa said is really important. I do appreciate the support, and I need it, right? I want to earn that from you, but I do need it. We got a lot of work to do, and some of it is challenging. But I also do want the challenge from you all, right? So if there's something, because like I don't know everything. I've been here a long time, but I haven't sat in this seat a long time. And I know that for us to transform athletics the way that we want, it will take everybody. But there's a special place in my heart for this idea of pioneers and celebrating our history. And I want our student athletes and our staff and everyone to understand the importance and the shoulders that we're standing on to get the opportunity to do what we do. And so that personally is driving me. And I just want to a couple things. So one, I do want to recognize Chris Griffin as the head of the Black and Gold Club, and recognize the rest of the National Commodore Club. Many of those staff members are here. This was like an idea, right, that we had, and you're trying to launch stuff in COVID, and that's very challenging, but we didn't want to wait on the perfect time. Like, alumni engagement and recognizing the people who allowed us to have the opportunities that we have today, that could not wait. So I want to recognize Chris and recognize Kathy and John, who agreed to be our co-chairs of a group that is in its infancy, and we're learning as we go. But I really appreciate that because it's critically important. There's also been a small group, we sort of fancy ourselves a Pioneers Committee, Andrew Marinus and James Thrillkill and Rod Gurley, and we'll be coming to some of y'all to help us with this. But the idea was to make sure we were devoting time to talk about how we are going to recognize the people who have paved the way. Rod Gurley deserves so much credit for pushing Vanderbilt on this. And so we should, a lot of credit for holding us accountable. So I remember talking in one of our meetings, one of our pioneers, right? One of our family members had passed away. It was during COVID in June. And Rod made the comment that he left this earth not knowing if Vanderbilt cared about him. And that thing just hurt. I mean, that hurt my heart. And I was like, we cannot have that. There are too many people who have invested too much. We cannot have that. And so if we say that we're family and we say that everyone is valued and everyone is important, I got to make sure that this department reflects that, right? We have a long way to go, but I do want everybody to know that your efforts were not in vain. That's really important for me to say to you and for you to feel that. Our student athletes need to know you. They need to understand your stories. We're going to continue to create opportunities to allow that to happen. And this is just the beginning. So it's not perfect, but know that we are very serious about closing the gap. And that gap has gotten wide and it's been there for far too long. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you in advance for being part of the transformation. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to transform. And there have been so many wonderful things that you all have been a part of to create the foundation so that we can continue to transform. It doesn't start with us. We know that, but we do have a responsibility. So just from a personal standpoint, I know without Kathy and Teresa and Rod and Charles and each of you, I know that I don't get the chance to sit in this role, to sit in this seat. I'm very, very grateful to everybody on this screen for your efforts. And so thank you for your support. What can you do? You can let us know. We don't, you appreciate the support, but let us know where we're falling short so we can fix it. Know that if we missed something, it wasn't on purpose, but we do need to know, right? We do need to know. And if you haven't had the opportunity to meet Daniel Dearmeyer, who is our new chancellor, I hope you'll have that opportunity sooner than later. But I do feel like from an athletic standpoint, we have a great partner there who understands that we've got a lot of work to do in this space in particular, and he wants to be challenged on that. I'm going to accept that challenge to hold him accountable, but that's what he wants. That's what I want. He made a comment that, he wants our student athletes to feel supported and part of the team when they're here, but when you leave, you are family. Well, I need to make sure that we live that out, but for everybody, but in particular for our pioneers who weren't always treated as part of the team and certainly did not feel like family. So I just wanted y'all to know that we recognize it, and I appreciate everyone's efforts. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing those words, Candice, and for joining us today. And I want to thank Teresa and Rod again for sharing your experiences and your stories. This conversation is being recorded, and we will have it available for folks to view this at a later date as well, should they not have been able to be here today. I also want to thank all of the many people who joined us today. I saw several pioneers in this call and lots of classmates and teammates here as well. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us. Look forward to having many of these conversations again moving forward, featuring some of you. And so I look forward to connecting with you in the near future on that. So with all that, I hope you all remain safe wherever you are. And as soon as we can, we're going to be inviting you all back to campus and celebrating you in person. I look forward to that moment when we can do so. But until then, I hope you remain safe and look forward to connecting with you again soon. So anchor down.